The Science of Self-Realization by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Chapter 2 is called Choosing a Spiritual Master. Our first section is called What is a Guru? Om Majnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmaye Sri Gurave Namah. I was born in darkness, and who has trained my mentality, my spiritual master, opened my eyes with knowledge, and they offer respect to his nobility when I make mention. If a spiritual master starts to act like they are a god, then they are worse than what considers to be a low animal. And our respect to divinity is through such teachers, but a true guru will never say that sort of thing. Bhagavad Gita 15:6. Na tad basayate suryo na sasanko na pavaka yadgatva na nivartante tadama paramam mama. The abode of mine isn't lit by the sun, moon, or anything electrical, like lightning. The person who truly reaches it doesn't return to material existence. Now, those who live the material life have different types of suffering. Yatmika, the difficulties of the material body. Adde Bautika, that regarding other entities. Adde the Avika, and that regarding the environment. Maybe suffering is not the right word, but difficulties that we must go through as beings in the material world. The Mundaka Upanishad 1-12. Tad vijnanartam sagurum eva begachat samit paneh Srotreyam Brahma Nishtam. And we need to remember that teaching from absolute authority is something that becomes necessary. The Bhagavad Gita 9:34. Mana baba mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam avaishyase yuktva evam Atmanam Matarayanah. Keep your mind busy in the thought of me, becoming devotees, offering respect, worshiping, and being completely absorbed in me. Surely you'll come to me. Now, one of the things that we need to remember is, like is said with Muhammad and Jesus, is that they spoke not the doctrine of their own, but they spoke that which they were sent with. And the one called Krishna is referred to as an avatar. So these words are about deity itself. And one of the things is not our own opinion or our own mention even. What we're trying to do is trying to direct people towards the greater authority. Bhagavad Gita 4:2. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduh sakalaneha mahata yogo nashta parantapa. And the transcendent way of attainment was received through the disciplic chain. And the pious rulers understood it in that way. But over time, these transmissions were broken. And it appears to people that that way to connect is gone. Bhagavad Gita 2:7. Karpanya dosho pahata svabhava parchyametvam dharma samuddah chetah yach shreyah syaneschetam brohe tanme seshyaste hamsade mam tavam prapannam. And this would have been Arjuna speaking, right? That he didn't know his duty. So that is how he became self-dishonoring. And it's because of his own weakness. But he's asking, how can I know what's best for me? I'm a disciple and a surrendered soul. In Arabic, they call that a Muslim. Instruct me. Bhagavad Gita 1866. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam saranam vraja aham tavam sarva papabhyo mokshayeshyame masucha. And so abandon these social orders and just become one who is surrendered to me. And you'll be delivered from the sinful, the wrongful reactions, at least on the spiritual level, right? And don't fear. And Chakravarti Thakura says, Yasya prasadad bhagavat prasadah. By the mercy of a spiritual master, the personality of God gives you benediction. And people will say, Sakshad Daritvena Samastasastraeh. The one who teaches you the scripture is as good as God. Well, you don't have a theophany. And so we can look at that at the greater meaning, that if you're not having the theophany, it's really actually just as good for you to accept the teaching without it. Perhaps even better that you didn't have that level of experience. Bhagavad Gita 4:34. Tad vide prane patena pare prasnena sevaya upadaksyante te jnanam jnaninas tattva darsanah. Try to be educated in truth through association with the spiritual master. Ask contentedly to develop your mind with him, and then those who are realized will give knowledge to you because you have known the truth. Sakshadarit Venna Samasta Sastraya. You gotta take the position. You gotta regard those who take the position as if it was God. Because, like, for example, in the Arabic tradition, the Arabic word Khalifa, at least from the religious thing, is you got a successor. And successor is supposed to be, enabling the rule that has been so divinely prescribed. Bhagavad Gita 14:22. Mam chayo vyabecharana bhakte yogena sevate nagunan samatityaetan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. And if you have unadulterated devotional service that you connect through, you're without the modes, and you have that absolute platform that you're lifted to as a spiritual entity. Like, for example, I was a member of Ekankar, and they talked about, you visit the planes, but then you are a being of that plane when you attain your, initiation degree. So it's that same principle without the organization standing over you and saying, yes, now you're on the spiritual platform that we tell you, right? Separating the saints from the swindlers. The importance is when you speak that you connect things to divinity, part of that relationship to divinity. So the truest of gurus have no secular life, regardless of their opinion of how to operate in the material world. And there are people that are searching for a spiritual life. And a lot of it is because they've just been removed from it. And it seems totally unnatural, and maybe, like some of these meditation techniques that people talk about, it's like, it's like, it's not easy. And maybe it's like, almost like that thing where that type of water that you can breathe in, right? Like you can literally fill your lungs with this and you can breathe, because it has so much oxygen, or it's, you can't just gas the water. There's something about it. But, and anyways, you know what I'm talking about, maybe. That, you put animals in it and you watch them resist like they're drowning or something, and then they're not drowning, but, some of the experiences are like that. You meditate and get these weird feelings, and maybe they're uncomfortable at first because there's something wrong with those centers. usually, right? Srotriyam Brahman Nishtam. And the point of a spiritual master is that they're versed in Scripture. They're referring to things as Scripture. They're not just sitting there philosophizing. That's something else, right? And you know it's not someone to follow when they're just, oh, I want money, I want fame. Sure, people have their effect. But when they're just out there, money and fame and all that, just, no. And it does matter what mantra you're using, what scripture you're using, what principles or meaning or function these things are. These do matter. Anybody who doesn't see that there is a difference, then there's a problem. And as much as some paths are better than others, the importance is the actual principles, consciousness, whatever you want, intention behind it. So if people call themselves this, that, or the other, it's not quite as important now, is it? The Brahma Nishtam is the one who's absorbed in the truth. In both the Islamic and what they call Zoroastrian traditions, regardless of which branch, really, truth is not just something you say something true, it's a lifestyle. So a guru is absorbed in that, and that phrase I just mentioned is along those lines. And all of life, you know, the guru that you should seek is one who will make all of life part of religion. Now, they may ask for renunciation of one sort or another, but certainly for those who aren't renounced, they will say that there is lawful sex life. There is just war. And again, that's not something that ever should be delineated to just whatever your country does or whatever, right? And, you know, we're not just trying to match some animal consciousness, right? There's something more to it. Sarvo Padevinirmuktam. It's a purification. When you look at my one graphic that I use, or the flag hanging from my temple room, that's the purification process. That's the striving to purify yourself, to do what is best, even when it's difficult. And those who just are trying to get you to do what's easiest, regardless, that's, you know, those are who to stay away from. Tatparatavena nirmalam. And you may use designations, but it's important that we realize that they are vehicles. That's what they are. They're vehicles. Bhagavad Gita 18:66. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam saranam vraja aham tavam sarva papedyo mokshayeshyame masucha. And so don't have fear about what you've done. Make it about surrender to the one rather than these varieties of social systems. And some must work, some must have family. You know, so these things aren't the enemy. It's just there's a principle of a voluntary connection. Bhagavad Gita 4:2. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduh. And those who were in government position, they understood that these things came through them being passed on reliably. And as in the person authorized to pass it on is the person who's learned it and verified that there's some understanding and that sort of stuff. And, disciplic succession is very important. We aham brahmasme. We are spirit soul. We're something more absolute than the limited thing that we see, all this stuff that we see before us, as beautiful as it is, right? Manushyanam sahasrashu kaschid yatate siddhaya. Out of the millions, there might not be but one that's interested. Of course, that's what matters. Anybody that's even a possibility of the one that's going to live it out, it's worth the try. 1866, Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharman Paratyajya Mamekam Saranam Vraja. Simple surrender. But who will surrender to the one? Because people want to be independent. Certainly we have our identities, right? With all humility at my command. That is our next section here. Sometimes it takes a long time for us to be in the position that we were really meant for. February of 1936 in Bombay was the time when Prabhupada became who, we expected, who he was meant to be. And this was after him formally accepting the spiritual path. So it took that long. Sakshadarit Venna Samasta Sasrair Yuktas Tatha Bhavyata Eva Sadbih Kentu Prabor Yah Preya Eva Tasya Vande Guru Sri Charanarvindam. Through revelation, it is said that spiritual teachers should receive respect for the divine personality. And this is obeyed by those who are pure. Spiritual teachers are supposed to be confidential servants. And so we offer respect at their feet, it's said. So whether they're doing a ritual and, maybe their feet face us in the middle of the ritual as we, prostrate or whatever, or that we're before them and we look towards them in a humble way. That's why people raise the pulpits. It's that whole at the feet of the spiritual leader. So the guy's a couple steps ahead, above everybody else and that sort of stuff. The Mundaka Upanishad 1.2.12 has Tad vijnanartham sagurum ava begachat samit paneh srotriyam brahma nishtam. And if you're going to reach towards transcendence, you find somebody who has went from the darkness to the light. In the scriptural in the learning system of absolute scripture. The Srimad Bhagavatam 11:17-27. Acharyam ambijyaneyan navamanyata karhechit namartya buddhya suyata sarvadeva mayo guru. And so you should understand the goodness of divinity through the teachers that are so living that. And if they're doing that, that teaching isn't ordinary. The Padma Purana, Sampradaya Vehinaya Mantraste Nishpalamata. So unless you receive initiation, that's authentic initiation, the spiritual formulas you are using might lose their efficacy. Because they're not associated with the right beliefs and intentions and stuff that would be implied with that. Because a lot of people take a phrase here and there out of context, right? The Svatara Upanishad 6:23, Yasya deve para bhaktir yatha deve tatha gurau tasya ete kathitahe artha prakasante mahatmana. So, the great personality, their mind has imbibed the importance of the scripture. Their faith is implied, and one is, unto them in one's reference. Because one of the worst things you can hear from a spiritual teacher is, oh, this is totally new. It's one thing if there's revelation that, here's a verse that only came to our nation, but it's another thing that a spiritual teacher is like, you haven't heard this? It's like, maybe you have. Shouldn't jump to conclusions, right? And sometimes you think, oh, I'm the only one that's ever come to this conclusion. A truer spiritual teacher will withhold such judgments, right? But, the faith is in divinity to give us this opportunity through teachers, The Sri Gita 4:34, Tad vede pranepatana pare prasnana sevaya upadakshante tejranam jnaninas tattva-darsana. So, approach those with knowledge. Approach those who are authentically of the transcendent ways. And once you accept that mental development, then your inquiries and the modes that you manifest can lead you further on, right? The Katha Upanishad 1:3-14, Uteshtata jagrata prapya varanibodata kshurasya dara neseta duratyaya durgam papastat kavayo vadante. And so it's time for us to wake up and understand what has been bestowed to us as a human, that we may realize ourself. It's a difficult thing. It's on the edge, very sharp. And this is the opinion of those who are truly the scholars. Now, we need not take scripture out of its context. That's a very important thing. The Srimad Bhagavatam 10:84-13. Yasyatma buddheh kunapetre datuke svadih kalatradeshu bauma idyadeh yat tirtha buddheh salelena karhechij janashav abijnashu saeva gurkhara. And the three constituents of the body, when they're accepted, you have this desire to be close to wife and children, or spouse and children, if you're, husband and children, if you're a woman, who has respect for the material world. They bathe in water, they make sacred journeys, but they don't take advantage of those who have real knowledge. They're no better than the animals. So regardless, if you're doing well on the material platform, you're doing well with just what your material duties to maintain yourself and do well on that thing. You think you're better than animals, you're not. Bhagavad Gita 7:4. Umirapo nalo vayu kamano buddhir evacha ahankara itiyame binna prakratir ashtada. And each of the elements, the earth, the fire, the water, the sky, the air, the intelligence, the mind, and the mental construction of consciousness, the developed structure of consciousness, they all belong to deity. But people think they're trapped, right? But the trap is thinking that this thing is the thing. So we're beyond the material world. We need to understand that. Srimad Bhagavatam 11:9-29. Labdva sudurlabham idam bahu sambhavante manushyam arthadamman nityam apiha dirah trunam yatata napatad anumartyu yavan neshreyasaya vishaya kalu sarvata syat. And so humanity is part of a long series of lives, and it's limited, but it's an opportunity for the highest of benefit for those who use their sobriety and their intelligence. They need to go about their real mission. And, while they're still alive in this life, before that death. And there's ways to be satisfied on the material platform all over the place, but one needs to avoid that when it's for itself, right? Sri Rupa Goswami said in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-2, 255 to 256. Anasaktasya vishayanyatharham upayunjata nirbandha krishna sambande yuktam vairvagyam uchyate prapanchekataya buddhya hare sambande vastuna mumukshubhe parityago vairagyam palgu kathyate. To be fully renounced, you're living in the consciousness of the God of light. And that potency isn't about attachment to what you can experience materially. Your concern is what's materially necessary. And you're not totally renounced either if you're giving up what you could be using for service of deity. Now, one of the things that I've been working on is trying to find people to give some volumes of my books, because I think it will achieve more if some people have some books and I keep some books, and certainly if there's copies, And so the complete understanding of the scriptural verses comes over time. And sometimes by listening to how other people understood it and worked it, maybe we don't totally agree with everything they say on everything, that it's the best thing or whatever. But if you look at what they've said, it's like, oh, wait, this is this, and this is, oh, I never made that conclusion. And so now you have something that you can look at. And some of the best spiritual teachers have done that. They've held back for a long time, and then they realize, wait, this verse does lead to that conclusion. The Chandogya Upanishad 8:13:1, Syamach Chavalam Prapanye Savalach Chamam Prapadya. And to receive that mercy, you give yourself over to the energy. And for that energy to be good to you, you give yourself over to what that energy is at the foot of, so deity, right? The Rig Veda 1:22:20, Tad Vishno Paramam Padam Sada Pasyante Sureya Deriva Chakshuratatam Vishnor Yat Paramam Padam. The feet of the maintainer are the transcendent focus of the light beings. And these feet are a source of transcendent enlightenment. In the first sloka of the Brahma Samhita, Isvara Paramah Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anandir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. The Supreme Controller, the God of Light, who transcends as eternal, blissful, and spiritual, is the origin of all, with no other origin. It is the ultimate herdsman, and the cause of causes. And the thing that we want is we want a confidence that we are going to be finally delivered spiritually. And we want a recollection